No matter how you travel, it's good to have a plan. Some people plan every minute. No sleep, bus, museum, another museum. While others only plan to take it day by day. When it comes to your finances, a plan is just as important. You can count on Credit Karma to give you the insights you need to understand your options so you can take charge of your financial path and find your way to money. Explore how you can make financial progress with confidence today. Intuit Credit Karma. Karma you can count on.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quests to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins. What is happening, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of this podcast in which we obsess over punk, hardcore, indie rock, emo, whatever it is, as long as it's of the independent variety we care so deeply about. And today is a person who I would consider a lifer in the scene, as it were. His name is Sean Ingram. He's the vocalist from Coalesce, but most importantly, as we speak right now, he is on the precipice of releasing a record from his new band called Idle Heirs. And if you have not listened to any of that music that has come out so far for that project, rectify that immediately. This thing is so damn good. They have a full length that's coming out on Relapse Records on April 11th called Life is Violence. I pre-ordered this thing so fast once I heard the first single, and then I was lucky enough to get a sneak peek of the whole record, and this thing is crushing. It's so good. If you like anything sort of post-metal, as it were, your Isis's, your Neurosis, all of that sort of stuff, you will love this record. Cult of Luna, that's another one. But Sean, I had on the show back in 2014. So many years ago. I mean, we're talking over 10 years ago, and obviously focused on his work with Coalesce there. So this conversation is a little more focused on his new project, but it also is just talking to him, generally speaking, of, what he's been up to, how he's been able to, process the world post-pandemic, all of the things that you discuss with people who you spoke to prior to this whole world getting topsy-turvy, turned upside down, all those other things. So I'm thrilled to bring him back on the show because I normally don't do this for those of you that pay attention on a regular basis. But sometimes you got to do a check-in, and that is what Sean deserves. Let's talk about the ways that you can support the show for absolutely free. One, spread the word on social media, tagging the show, tagging the guests, whatever it is, as long as you're being like, yo, listen to this episode, loved it. Thank you. Appreciate that. You can also leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or just simply leave a rating on Spotify. All of those things help the show get recommended to the people where it needs to. Plain and simple, the reason the show exists is because of your support. So take 30 seconds and do one of those things, and I will thank you if I could recognize that you did it and, find your username and track it back to you. But I can't do that. But regardless, this is my sincere thanks for not only downloading this show, but doing any of those steps. Appreciate that immensely. Also, let's talk about weekly recommendations. I like to put out new music in the world in regards to discoveries or things that are just tickling my fancy over this past week. I have a link in the show notes in which you will be able to find a Spotify playlist where you'll be able to consume all of the weekly recommendations I've been shooting through over the past year and some odd months. And it's really gratifying for me because I love when people are like, hey, I literally only listen to this band because you mentioned it on your podcast. So love to hear that. Love to see that. The recommendation this week is a big record, but one that you need to make sure that you listen to. It is the new Deaf Heaven record, Lonely People with Power. This thing is a staggering piece of work. Deaf Heaven, for those of you that have followed them throughout their career, they've done a lot of interesting, sometimes controversial decisions in regards to the way that the band sounds. Their last record, Infinite Granite, was one of my favorite records of that year that it came out. And this thing is a beast. This is like, they're pulling no punches here. It is just blistering. It still has a sense of melody. It is really, really exceptional. And I just love to see this band being able to experiment with a lot of different sounds, but then ultimately come back to the thing that they not only enjoy making, but are able to be adults when making it. Because, I mean, when you're talking about Sunbather and all their previous records, when they were, more aggressive, for lack of a better term, that's what they grew up doing and performing, and now they can return to it, hopefully a little bit older, a little bit wiser. And this record is just, I've only listened to it for obviously, a week since it's been out, but this thing is quite possibly one of my favorite things that they have ever done. So listen to the new Deaf Heaven record, Lonely People with Power. And like I said, link in the show notes for you to follow along and all the recommendations, and hopefully you get keyed into a piece of new music. So yes, that's that. How about we talk to Sean? Because like I said, Idle Heirs, such a good band. The name of the record that's coming out on April 11th on Relapse Records is called Life is Violence, which is a great title for a record, but they still have some limited edition vinyl for pre-order, and I highly recommend you do that because the record is exceptional. It is such a cool piece of art that you'll hear from Sean had to exist. And it was so cool to just hear the story of how this came together and his engagement in just still creating and still playing music, because, you don't need to, but Sean does. And we are thankful for it. So let's talk to Sean right now. I was listening to that episode to obviously prepare for this discussion, but I found it enlightening for a few reasons. One of them being the fact that we were pontificating about how obviously, hardcore and punk in general in 2014 had lost the, danger edge, whatever you want to call it, that, we grew up with or what have you, and definitely old man on the porch energy. But, the point that you made was that obviously because now bands can make a living off of this, and this is something that's a more of an industry now. And in revisiting that, the fact that we're sitting in the year of our Lord 2025 and hardcore has only become even more popular than it was then. So I'm curious if your opinion has, changed per se, because I'm sort of leading the witness here, but there's still that notion of okay, even though kids are still, stage diving and pitting and all that sort of stuff in venues that really didn't allow it at one point, and now it's okay, we're okay with this. And then hardcore has obviously broken through certain ceilings in regards to getting nominated for Grammys and all that sort of stuff. How do you feel now, kind of, as a outside observer, where it's just wow, I cannot believe this dumb thing that I did and I still do is now where it's at? Do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, it only makes sense that, that a band would, a straight hardcore band would play Coachella, right? Or, or get a Grammy. There's talent in this. I think that one of the things that I neglected to really kind of credit this music for is that it takes talent to play, and it takes talent to do it right? So, even 10 years ago when we talked, I didn't feel, that screaming maybe was really respected as a true art form. Now you have people making livings off of it. I've hired several of them to really kind of understand the physicality of it. and I say this often, but like when it comes to screaming on a record, it's like the mainstream at large doesn't appreciate a good scream, but they know a bad one when they hear one, right? There was that there's the Democrat political guy who did the bad scream and it completely ruined his career, right? So it's like a bad a bad scream can't do that. But I can't remember. I'm spacing his name. I should have had that prepared.
Howard Dean, right?
Howard Dean, yes, exactly. Yeah, the Howard Dean.
Yeah,
exactly. It's the Howard Dean rule. He's just screaming. He's excited. And but because, that's just the power. I just feel like that I'm really learning that's the power of scream, right? It's like a scream and it can convey a type of emotion that a singing can't, right? And so, so I, as I re-entered it and re-examined like why I even wanted to do this again, let alone twice as much, what are the, what exactly are those things, that, that I can use to tell whatever story I want to tell. And it just really, it's just obvious. It's hard. There's real talent in these bands, even, and there's also two different worlds. There's the world that still is existing on the same ethos as the 90s. And then there's a world that is existing, on, six figure, bands make six figures a year, and it's a job and all that. And I don't think that discredits anybody in any way, shape, or form, but it just is interesting to see that, and I also have this kind of further kind of like perspective. I have a daughter who's 25 and I have a son who's 18, and they both are very heavily into the independent music scene, and they both drag me to all sorts of shows. And my son takes me to shows like Tsunami and Kubla Khan, and my my daughter takes me to stuff that's like Chat Pile and things like that. So it's like they're exposing me to this too, and it's just it's just, I guess really what I'm trying to wrap up here is that like the world has changed, but the world has not changed. It's like these bands are largely operating exactly like we did back in the 90s, and bands did all through the 2000s. So that part is reassuring to me, because it's like, okay, cool. It's not this thing that you have to keep up with. It's not something you have to chase. You don't have to chase something. All you really have to do is just feel comfortable in your own skin and tell the story you want to tell without having to worry about all that stuff. So seeing that was very reassuring to me, but you're right. It's all over the place. It's definitely bigger, there's definitely a million times more bands than there were, even 10 years ago, and technology obviously allows for that, as a platform and as also to make it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's cool that you're being able to not only have this exposure to bands that, you may not have even listened to or come across your radar, but it's like that is, especially using a band like Tsunami, where it's like if you were to play them at any juncture throughout, the spectrum of hardcore, I don't think anybody would be like, you know what? That's the band. Like, that's the band that's going to be like, completely DIY. Like, they don't have a booking agent, they don't have a manager, like all of these things. But then it's like, oh yeah, they can play in front of 1,000+ people. And it's like, to your point, even though the, quote unquote scene is larger, it's still operating off the same sort of ideas. It's just like, oh yeah, now we can do this in a more professional way and get into rooms that weren't available to us, 10 to 15 years ago.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. Yeah. So like, yeah. And I don't know if I have much more to add to that, but yeah. And it's the same booking agents, and it's so cool to, to work with like the second and third generation of those booking agents that we worked with. Or like, oh, I'm of the Matt Pike school, or, oh, I'm of, this other person's school, so, yeah, it is a little bit of a trip, and it does make you feel old and stuff. But like, I just feel like, I went to my 30-year high school anniversary or reunion, not anniversary, reunion. And God, just some of it's just nothing against the folks there, but they were just old people, you know what I mean? And I just, me and my buddy Dan Askew from Second Nature Records, it's like we still chat all the time. And I was just like, I just think skateboarding and music let us just age a little bit more gracefully. You know what I mean? Because it's like when I say that, I mean like some of the folks looked like 70, and I was just like, God damn it, am I that old? Like, are we this old? And we had to question ourselves, but and age comes for us all, but like I just feel like that the folks that are involved with this type of this world and this music, I would just urge them to be grateful. Because when you don't have it, your life changes so rapidly, in ways that you don't expect, you know what I mean? And sometimes it's how you think, right? Because DIY really is a state of mind, honestly, it's like, and so, when you remove all of this stuff, it's just like, it's like Fight Club, right? Where he's just like on IKEA buying some dipshit furniture all the time, and he's just like losing his mind. So there's a lot of truth in that kind of, losing yourself when you let go of this thing. And I did lose it, you know what I mean? And so when I went through it, just making that decision to be like, all right, well, what's missing from my life? It actually was my wife who had to tell me, you need to go do music. Like, get out of here, go do, this is the thing you need to do. So, I'm not always super clued in on like what I need, you know what I mean? So, but she was very right, and so, and it didn't take long to slip back into it. It just doesn't take long to slip back into weekend trips with your buddies and, and just, just raging on these shows and just working your shit out on stage. And, so it's just, that's the other interesting thing about this thing that we're lucky to be a part of, is that it's, as long as you're honest about what you're doing and you're doing it for you, it does not reject you. It welcomes you back with open arms, whether it's something new or something old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's important what you were able to recognize through another person of pushing you to being creative. Because I think that, I mean, everybody, like you said, age comes for everybody, but also lack of time comes for everybody with extenuating circumstances, responsibilities. And so you do see people, going over to, for lack of a better term, to civilian life because they're like, I'm tired. I've like done this. I've worked. I've taken care of kids or whatever. And then all of a sudden they're like, I've got nothing besides like, I watch sports or whatever. Like it removes that creative muscle that it does take work to flex. But when you give it up, that's when you do, like you said, recognize the fact like, oh, it feels like something's missing, especially when you've done it for so long,
Yeah, and it's the creative muscle. You're right, and I think that I think you hear people say it, in just the mainstream circles, like if you retire and you don't work, you'll die very quick. You know what I mean? It's like, so I even in outside of this whole thing, I think other people have their different kind of metaphors, but it's it's a special kind of hell when you can't be creative. If you're a creative person and you don't, and you punish yourself because you don't get it or you feel like you need to do all these things, it's like balance is hard. I will just say that. But when you can find the balance, it's definitely worth it. But yeah, it was a real struggle. But I also have an amazing partner in Chayla. So she gets me there. She gets me to school.
Absolutely. No, it's cool. It's cool. Ding dong. What is that? Can you answer the door, please? Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that because my rockabilia.com order has arrived. That means UPS knocked on my door, gave me awesome band merch that's officially licensed. And you know what? I got 10% off by using the promo code 100 words or less. I know it's a little role-playing experiment right there, but that could be you. And what is thrilling about Rockabilia is the fact that they have 500,000 items for you to browse around and find on their awesome website. Super easy to navigate. And I don't care what sort of music you're into, whether you're into mainstream rock, whether you're into hip hop, whether you're into metal, whatever it is, you can find something on their site and they'll ship it to you from the Midwest here in the United States. Gets to you very fast, highly efficient customer service in case you run into any problems, and you are supporting an independently owned and operated business. They've existed for 30 plus years. I want to say they're going on their 35th anniversary. I'm not exactly sure when, but on top of it all, it's all officially licensed. That means the bands get paid. You're able to support them even if you're not able to go to a show. It's so cool that this thing exists. So go to rockabilia.com, use the promo code 100 words or less, 10% off your whole order. Do it now so you can get that awesome knock at the door with a rad box full of merch. There we go. Thank you, Rockabilia. I love bringing on new partners that I wholeheartedly support, and 30-something Records ticks that box for me. This is an awesome record label based out of Berlin, Germany, started in 2019, and they have been putting out some amazing stuff. In the US, you can get them through Steadfast Records, and then in the UK, you can get them through Devil Dog Distro, and they're also shipping worldwide from Germany. But I want to focus on one specific release of theirs. It is the Suzzallo Records, and it is up for pre-order as a limited edition gatefold deluxe LP, standard LP, and CD. The record comes out May 2nd. But you're like, oh, who's Suzzallo? Why should I care? Rocky Vadalato, Waxwing. The dude is prolific in regards to putting out music. I have loved his stuff for so many years, and this is a return to form. Rocky Vadalato has been doing his own independent thing for many, many years, putting out incredible records. But Waxwing, that is what really got its hooks in me personally, and this record I could not be more excited about. You got Ben Gibbard on some songs. There is just so many reasons for you to check out this new music, and then on top of it, order the records directly from 30-something Records. And then when you go to their website, you can also find other amazing releases. Like, how about the Fire Theft LP? Jeremy Enoch from Sunny Day Real Estate, his band after Sunny Day Real Estate, they put that out on vinyl. I know I ordered my copy many, many moons ago whenever they put that out, year and a half ago. I can't remember exactly when, but 30-something Records is an awesome, awesome record label you need to pay attention to, and also pay attention to the Suzzallo release that is coming up and releasing in May. So check all that stuff out now. Kind of on that same topic, the way that I've viewed you from afar in regards to like the way that you've approached not only like lyrical content, but projects you've participated in, like it's definitely whether or not you intended this, like there's been a long view where it's like you're like, yes, this is of the moment, I've been expressing myself, but the fact that, like you said, you can slip back into, Coalesce or start a new project as you have and be able to accomplish something like, it's a Herculean effort to like even get, probably a Coalesce show booked like after you had not played for like 8 years, be like, oh gosh, like, is everybody available? Does everyone want to do this? Like, it's a lot. So I guess the question that's contained in there is like, how do you like, is it just the simple act of like you maintaining those relationships with obviously the guys in Coalesce with, your new collaborator? Like, is this as simple as like, we're just all kind of around each other, so eventually once the idea comes around, then it's kind of right place, right time scenario?
Well, I I would say that I think everything has a time. And like the stars have to align for all of this stuff to happen, I had this conversation with my wife, because we're talking about timing where, we're getting ready to go through some more, we're on death watch with some family members and things. And, and we were just kind of talking about, like bands or when do you stop it? And I was like, these bands, you just don't choose when to do them. You just choose whether you want to get on or get off. It's like a train, like the Coalesce train comes through, I get on, you know what I mean? And then we all get off and then it comes back through every 10 years, and that's really what it's like. People don't usually believe me when I say this. I mean, incredibly introverted. I just am, it's hard for me. It's like, I don't go out and hang out a lot, my couple friends and, and I just, I keep to myself. But with Coalesce, it's like, we just get together once a year. Every year, we just get together for dinner, around Christmas when everybody's in town. And, every year, no one talks about doing the music, but for whatever reason, this last year, Jess is like, "Hey, are we playing music or what?" And once he started playing again, then he got super excited, and he got endorsed by Dunable Guitars, and they built him special use guitars for him, and he's just so excited. And watching him write, his contagiousness is contagious. Like, Jess is a super contagious person, and so that's how the Coalesce world really works. As far as on the Idle Heirs side of the thing, that really was just me and my friend Josh, and we would just chat back and forth, and that band largely functioned kind of like Nine Inch Nails does, right? There's like two guys, and then we invite our friends in. So like the drum parts are written, the keys are written. Josh wrote all of that stuff, and then I wrote all of the vocal arrangements, and then all of the lyrics, and then we worked through the songs together. He's an engineer and a producer, so like our demos are like, near finished quality, out of the gate. And so, and then we invited Josh's friends, who are now my friends, into this kind of ecosystem and stuff. So that was also a very different type of way to approach it, and they've both been interesting. And I think that the thing that I like the most about it is that Idle Heirs gives me perspective on Coalesce, and Coalesce gives me perspective on Idle Heirs, as far as like what I want to do, and what I can do and what I won't do, and so, it's just, that being said, I think that timing is the most important part of all of this. Like, I wasn't having this conversation in 23 at all, in any way, shape, or form, or 22, but for some reason, 24 was the year that Jess was, wanting to go again, and then the fact that I was already doing something, was even more bizarre, because like, okay, cool, I'm going to do two things.
Now, I got two bands as a grown ass adult, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm approaching 50, and I, my kids had always asked, are you going to do this again, Dad? I've always wanted to see you play, and I'm like, no. And I thought that was an honest answer. It's like, yeah, Jess has no interest in this. And, but look, who knows? I mean, the world just does what the world does what it does, and I just jumped on, and I'm just going to just be grateful to be creative in the moment,
Yeah, that's exciting. And kind of on that similar tip too, like when your kids obviously did watch you perform in whatever iteration, was it was it emotional for you? Was it emotional for them? Was it interesting? Like, what was the emotion?
So for me, Coalesce is very personal, like lyrically and performance wise. It's very, it's just very personal. It's not really family oriented, and from my perspective, right? Even though I'm singing about my kids, I'm, in a lot of these songs, they're adults now stage diving, and I'm singing about them in these different ways of like, how can I protect them, in their infancy, right? So, I don't know if that's really hit me yet, performing live. I think that what I did learn, especially from the Kansas City show that we did late last in December, is that it is emotional for them, because they love me, and they love the fact that I did this thing, and they love that people love Coalesce, and for them it's exciting, but they go hard, like they go hard in the pit, and my son God love him. He landed on somebody's head who didn't want to be moshing, and this one guy from the crowd went after him, and I had to jump in and get this guy off. And I was just like, oh my God. So, that part is weird too, because it's like now you have, it used to be I only had to worry about myself. Now I got to worry about, the people that I love in the pit, and so, it's just different. So it's a little bit of an adjustment, but for them, it's like I've never seen them so proud of me or so proud of anything, in my life. And so it definitely was it was a good night for sure, but yeah, it's new. It's very new.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I'm
Sure.
still kind of processing it,
Of course. And talk to me about your relationship with Josh. You're obviously your, new/old collaborator in regards to, I presume, because I know that he's been a producer in the Kansas City scene for quite some time. Was it like, had you known each other for, 20 plus years? Cause correct me if I'm wrong, but he obviously didn't track any like Coalesce stuff. Like, how did you run across him in the first place?
Yeah. So there's a good stretch of time that, people would want to have me on their records and just like sing a couple lines or whatever. And so I met him through one of those bands. And there were these great kids that I would play bike polo with, and they're like, I don't talk about music. When I'm in these other worlds, a lot of people don't really know what I do. And so, when they found out that, I was of some note, they were like, oh my God, you have to sing on our record. We're in a hardcore band too. And that's, I think I met Josh maybe once or twice previous to that, but that's when I really met him because he was engineering it and stuff. And so, I drove out to the studio and, just laid some tracks, onto this, song for him and stuff. And then I got called back for Norma Jean, the record with the birds on it. And then, I did some bits there. And then I want to say that he did the bit I did for Every Time I Die. Baloo asked me to do some, and I think Josh did that one. I could be wrong though. But, anyways, he was just kind of like my go-to for those kind of like, those bits and stuff, and we get along, I'm a business owner. I'm in a band, and I just appreciate people who are friendly with me and who don't want things from me. Like I really appreciate people like that, So like when I can talk to somebody who also is in a position of someone always wanting something from them, it's like I usually have a pretty good rapport with folks like that because we get it, we just want to be fucking left alone and be people, right? Without like owing a favor or whatever, right? And so I think that's really how our friendship started, and we just kept touch over the years, and going back to whenever that thing was. So I guess it was probably 10 years, and so yeah, and so he was he would always be like, hey, we should do a band, we should do something. And I would say, yeah, it sounds cool. And then I would never think about it again.
Of course. Right.
Yeah. So when the thought came up to be like, hey, maybe I do want to do something, Josh came to mind, and, and he, had these ideas, and, and he played them, and I was like, yeah, these are cool, and we had some false starts, and we kind of started and stopped. And then, I was going through a really rough time, with just grief, just like so many people in my life are dying. And so, as I'm going, like navigating that and going through all of that, and my wife finally was just like, you need to be creative again, figure out how to do it. Josh was there, and really what ended up happening is you know, I think there was at some point, sorry, I remember, I don't want to get this wrong because it's being recorded. I think that at some point, you know, he was like, "Hey, let's do this. Let's try this." And I challenged him. I was like, I said, "Look, I'm just not a dreamer. I'm a doer. So you write something and you bring it, or don't talk to me about this anymore. I don't want to hear about it." And he ended up booking a trip to the Pacific Northwest and just sequestered himself. And then he wrote this record. And he was sending me demos along the way, you know, to see if I was interested in anything that they had. And the first song that he sent me is actually the last song on the record, titled Mama. And it's just acoustic guitar and that's it, you know. And that was a big relief for me because that told me very quickly that he's not trying to, you know, be Coalesce Light or, you know, or a Timu Coalesce, you know, because he's got the singer, you know's attention, right? It was real clear that the idea is that, hey, we're just going to do something totally new. And that's what I was interested in, you know. And even in the Coalesce context, every time we do a new record, yeah, it's Coalesce, but like we always want to do something new. We always want to do something different, you know. It's like we're not trying to write the same record again. But this was even more exciting because it's like there was no even sound that I had to, you know, not that I conform within a sound, you know, but like the sky was the limit. You know what I mean? It could be anything. It could be pop, you know, it could be anything, you know? And so when that kind of came through, it was just like an explosion of creativity on my end, you know, and I just couldn't stop writing constantly. You know, I really learned that the way that I write is when I drive. And I hear something in another song or I mishear something. And like, so for months, I kept pulling over. I had all these spots I would pull over and write down, you know, what I wanted to say on this thing. And so, yeah. And then so it was just hitting the floor, kind of running from there. But also the thing about this, you know, the Idle Heirs record is it wasn't designed for a record label or for release. I mean, this record really was truly designed to heal, you know, to work through some shit and to, you know, and just, and to create. And so, you know, we did obviously soften on that since we're talking about it, but, you know, that really, there was like a great freedom in the idea that, you know, as someone who's put out many records and has fought many straight edge people in his day and, you know, has been called every name in the book, you know, to be able to be like, look, I want to write the thing that I want. I want to be vulnerable in these ways. I want to express these types of ideas for my kids, so on and so forth, without fear of anybody hearing it or making judgment and that type of thing. And so that was really interesting because that really is what, you know, that's what excited me about the project. And that's, I mean, it was an incredible play space to be able to do that, you know. Now as we are playing our shows now and stuff, you know, it's like, you know, maybe I would have thought differently from doing 2.5 minutes of just straight, you know, soft singings on guitar before we go into stuff. But you know what I mean? It's like, it is what it is. And, you know, and I wouldn't have it any other way, you know. I don't know if it could be done again. Like if, you know, any follow up to this would not be able to follow that pattern, right? Because it's like, you know, we started one way and we literally dropped a nuclear bomb on it, you know, and that there's no going back, you know. But, you know, it just didn't, you know, you know, Drew from Relapse and, you know, Rennie, I think they really just kind of got me excited to maybe, share it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was very, it's very interesting how that whole thing came about because, Drew, Drew from Relapse, he's very much like a cheerleader. You know what I mean? And like, he just loves music. I mean, he's just such a fan of it and stuff and all music and all styles, it's like, there really is no such thing as a Relapse band, right? Because it's so diverse, like what they're doing. And so, so it was just kind of flattering. And then also just kind of like, well, I trust them, they're going to do a good job with this. So there was a lot going on there for sure.
What's that sound? That's a sound of a plane landing and delivering a package from evilgreed.net to you. They are an amazing merch store that powers bands and record labels of all shapes and sizes, but most specifically on a cool artistic punk and hardcore vibe. Like, let me just name some of the bands they work with, whether it's Blood Incantation, Speed, Brutus, Drain, the list could go on, but you get it. You go to evilgreed.net and you'll be like, yo, I like 90% of these bands here, which is incredible because you can order from this awesome, independently owned and operated company from Berlin, Germany. But the shipping rates to us here in the United States are super advantageous. They're cheap for all things considered. Getting it from Berlin, Germany to your house and wherever in the continent of the United States. But they are a great place. It reminds me of the feeling that I got when I got my early Revelation Records catalogs, really before the internet existing, and just like leafing through it and being like, I'm going to put together a massive order from them. And then I'll get it and I will be so dang excited. So let evilgreed.net give you that feeling of like, I have to like not buy all this stuff, maybe just half now and then like half later, which is totally fine. So independently owned and operated. That's an important thing because, sometimes you order from other places that, may not be the most, independently owned and operated. I'll just leave it like that. So go to evilgreed.net, shop to your heart's content, and buy a lot of merch. I'm thrilled to welcome a new partner on this show, and that is the awesome people at GGT Records. They are an awesome record label based out of Seattle, but I am specifically talking to you about the Caged View record. New fuel for an old fire. For those of you that are paying close attention to the show, I had Pat, the vocalist, on the episode last week, and it was a great discussion. And Caged View is his band. They are a really, really cool amalgamation of like sort of Snapcase, Hum vibes with a Revolution Summer mix. I am really, really thrilled that this music is getting out there in the world, and GGT Records is supporting them. So they are releasing their second single called Time Blind. It comes out on April 4th. It's available on all streaming platforms. And there will be a link in the show notes where you can pre-order this EP right now. It's only limited to like 350 copies. So you better get your order in. I know I did, and I am excited to receive this thing. So Caged View, the name of the record is New Fuel for an Old Fire. And you will be able to pre-order that thing with a link in the show notes and support an awesome label called GGT Records. They're, like I said, based out of Seattle, and they have a whole lot of cool records that they have released. But let's get that Caged View record, and then the rest is history. So thank you very much, GGT Records. I appreciate you walking me through that because, like, I think it's always interesting when you come to projects, bands, or whatever with preconceived notions. I mean, everybody does. Like, like when the record got sent to me, I was like, oh, cool. Like, Sean's in a new band. I'm going to listen to it. And what impressed me was the fact, and this isn't me just blowing smoke up your butt, even though it is, just the idea where I'm like, oh, like this is good. Like I knew it was going to be good, but I'm like, this doesn't need to be as good as it is. But it's like, yeah. Oh, you guys took the assignment seriously. You're like, this is the stew that we're playing in. It's the post-metal universe or what have you. And Sean still sounds like himself, but it's stretched out in a way that it obviously, like you said, isn't just the fifth carbon copy of what you have been doing in the past. And so because of that, the question that I'll ask you, piggybacking off of the compliments I'm giving you, is the fact that you're, was it, I guess nerve-wracking to be like, all right, well, I'm going to be doing this. Yes, you had no conception that you were going to release this or anything, but like, oh, I'm going to like sing and stuff. Like, I want to be doing stuff over melodies. Like, this is weird.
Well, I've always wanted to sing, and I've always tried to push singing into Coalesce where it could be, like the comedian in question on the Aux record is a good example. And I just, with this type of project, where you just get to do this cool post-metal stuff that's just like slow builds, time to breathe, time to, really dig into a thought lyrically and to really bring it home, it's like, some of these songs, I mean, gosh, our opener is what, 6 minutes?
I was going to say, you got a lot more time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just all over the place, and then the second to the last song, like our third single, Dead Ringer, is a solid 10 minutes, which seems kind of nuts by, marketing standards, that you're going to try to ask someone to listen to a 10-minute song, but, here's the thing that's so interesting, and I really kind of learned this before I read Rick Rubin's book, but like really truly, like if you just let a song tell you what needs to be there, like what it needs and what it wants, it kind of creates itself. And like that's just such a true statement that he wrote an entire book about, and he puts it in the way of like, hey, you just need to be like an antenna, like a radio antenna, and then send it out and be receptive to those things and put them in. And I didn't read it until after we wrote the record, but I was just like, that is exactly what I experienced on some of these songs, because it's, we have some that, like Rare Bird, right? We have this melody part and then it's once, and then we have, then we have this heavy part and it's once, at the ending, you know what I mean? It's like, but that's what those parts called for. You know what I mean? It's like, of course you can just scream over everything, but like I also was trying to, really be successful at, conveying to the very small group of listeners that I had intended to actually feel what I was saying, right? Like the lyrics and how it was being delivered were important to me. So, that was interesting to kind of learn, is that, it's like these songs, when you're on a roll, they write themselves, and I have a song that, from the Coalesce world that wrote itself, A Safe Place. That song wrote itself. I woke up in the middle of the night and from beginning to end, like, and I didn't change a single word, and like those types of experiences are like, I take it to be, or I used to take it to be that like, it's, I'm not working hard, but like now I take it to be that like, that's when you're in the pocket, and like something magical is happening, and you don't really have control over it and you don't really need to either. And that's the fun part. And there were so many parts like that, like the bridge on Dim Shepherd, I had all these different ideas that I was going to make that happen. And then we opted for this kind of sung out Western kind of vibe, right? And that's what it called for, and that's what it was going to be. So, I don't know if I had a lot of experiences like that with Coalesce, because it's very chaotic and it's very static and it's very math driven, you know what I mean? But when I'm, when I'm into this other kind of like prog post metal world and stuff, it's just like, I mean, that's just my bread and butter, it's like Tool and Elder are my bands. Those are my go-tos, and so, that's how my brain thinks. And, and I really learned that's how I write,
Yeah, that's cool. It's cool that you were able to slip into that. And like you said, find a way to, because sometimes, and I'm sure you've seen this, where it's like, if you square peg and round hole it in a musical perspective, where it's like, oh yeah, it fits, but it's not that snug. And so it's like, it's cool for you to find the space within that context. Did you, because I know that the record was recorded in Norway. Did you actually go to Norway to record your vocals, or did you just do them back home?
Yeah. So yeah, the whole Norway thing was just, Josh had called me and said, "Hey, I got this crazy idea." He goes, "We'll probably never write another record. I've always wanted to record at this place. Coltaluna, has made it really famous. It's in on the island of Giske, I believe is how you pronounce it, in Norway." And, and we looked at the money and I was just like, fuck it, let's do it. Like, this sounds fun, And so, yeah, so we flew out there for 2 weeks and, we tracked it live. So the record was definitely tracked live. There's, if you took it apart, in the studio, you can hear the strings being strummed from the guitar. You can hear screaming from some of the members through the guitar pickups, and like all those fun things that make it, a living, breathing thing. And so, I actually was, pretty, recently diagnosed as having celiac disease before we went to that trip. And, I am one of the unfortunate people that doesn't just get a tummy ache when I get a hold of wheat. I get the flu, and it's like a 3-day flu thing. So like it's a very serious disease for me. And so I can't have it at all in any way, shape, or form. I can't be cross-contaminated, all this nonsense. Also, I'm diabetic, so those two fight each other. But I had gotten into something out there, and so I was in bed sick for 3.5 days. And, so I missed a large chunk of my spot, of my space to do it. But Josh tells the story that I came down in my underwear and my hair all messed up after 3 days, and just said, "I think I'm ready. Let's do it." And then, right. and then we went for it, So what we ended up doing is we ended up tracking five of the songs while we were there, and then we tracked 3 of them when we got home. And so, I was concerned that it wouldn't have the same feel or vibe, but I don't even remember which ones are which anymore. They all flew the same. But I will say this. Is that I've made a bunch of records, and we had always worked and then went into Ed Rose's place, and tracked at night and stuff. And like the bands have been doing it right, and I just have not been paying attention because sequestering yourself and getting out of town and then just focusing on it, that is the magic of recording, and so I just don't ever want to record in Kansas City again unless I sequester myself at a hotel or something like that. But like going from Life and Slack and all of these other things that are dinging at you all day, and then like getting a Chipotle and then going to the studio, it's just not the same as just being in the moment for the whole moment and getting to record. So I was absolutely floored at how special the recording experience was for me over there. Never mind the fact that we're in Norway, what I mean? Right. Where, which is, it's on all the fjords, and it's just beautiful, and, people are nice, and, Trump doesn't exist in your mind over there, and like all this other stuff that, is stressing everybody out, and it was just peace, and the sea is clear, and there's a little seal that would come up and swim around, and so yeah, it was just a magical experience. And then the Northern Lights at night, it just was terrific. And so I just don't ever see myself wanting to do it any other way, whether that's sequestering, with Baloo over in Salem, or sequestering with, someone out in Arizona or whatnot. It doesn't really matter where it is as long as it's not here,
Right.
That's
Just
the
focused. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure to a lot of people, they're like, yeah, no shit, dumbass, but like, it took me a really long time to figure that out, that, that is,
Smart.
I was doing it wrong. You know what I mean? So this whole time.
Well, and truthfully too, it sounded like that experience, even though yes, it is focused, and you had a certain period of time to do it. It's very reminiscent of how bands obviously used to record in regards to like on tape, where it's just like, all right, like I mean, I'm sure obviously all the sessions you were doing, for functioning and what have you, where it's like we only have a certain amount of time in here, so like we got to do this, and like of course, yes, to your point, that there is that, you did a certain amount of songs there and a certain amount of songs, when you got back home, but that urgency that exists when you do have that deadline, whether it's self-imposed or whether it's, financially imposed, that it does, you're just like, I can't believe we got a whole full length done in like a weekend, which is like what all of our bands did. Like, it's like, oh yeah, I got $800. Like, this is all I can do. So yeah, of course.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do they say? They say that I think I heard this recently, I surprisingly hadn't heard it before. It said something that time's the killer of creativity. Like if you have too much time, that like I think it was in context of all things the Deadpool Wolverine movie, but like but I think that they were saying that like, hey, we got gajillions of dollars, but like we got to stop because like this movie's gonna suck if we just keep spending money on dumb garbage. We need to make it creative. So I thought that was interesting, because I think that is true, but yeah, I mean, I'm no stranger to 1-inch and 2-inch reel, tapes, what I mean? And like, there's a certain point where you can't punch in because that tape can't take it much more, So like, yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm really dating myself there, but like, that was how that is how we recorded back in the day. But like, but now you have all this stuff where you have modeling, you have room modeling, you can, they are selling all these different things. So it's like, hey, make it sound like you recorded, the Nirvana record, which is
totally.
like, which is almost like AI, the way my brain processes it. You know what I mean? And so like, even though it's not AI, but like, it's just, like you're photoshopping life somehow, or sound. But yeah, anyways.
Yeah. I'm sure, like, I mean, now that you've experienced some shows with, your new band, and obviously, like you said, playing more with Coalesce recently, I'm sure that playing shows sits in a different context for you or different headspace, or do you approach it? I mean, I know you approach it like vocally the same way, like, maybe you're obviously warming up a little bit more now than you did back in the day. How, do you feel like you appreciate the shows more? Like, how does it differ from your previous experiences?
Well, yeah, no, I to me, it's like you're not a band if you're not playing shows. Like, to me, that was the most important thing about Idle Heirs, is that like we have, if we're doing this, we're playing shows. I'm not doing, it's not a project, it's a band, right? And
right,
so,
right.
I just, nothing against people doing projects. It's just, the way I wanted to do it is like, to me, it's like, that's what makes it real, is the show, not the record. It's really the show, that's great. You could spend a week and do this thing, and spend this time writing it, but can you pull it off live? Right. So,
right.
Yeah. So to me, that is like as important, if not more important than like recording, and in a lot of ways, it's like, having, especially on the Coalesce side of this coin, it's like, being creative and all that is its own thing, but like, it really pays off live. Like that's, like when you're writing these parts, you know what I mean? For that band, you know what I mean? It's like, I can't wait to play this live. That's what's being said, The bands are very different from a technology standpoint too. So for Heirs, we sunk a lot of time and money into kind of like an in-ear rig, and we had 7 people on stage. We're essentially a 5-piece with keys, and then Brad does lap steel, and also he runs the computer for our in-ears, and we have a freaking theremin, and we actually use it in the song.
Right.
It's on lemonade stands. We actually use one, which is so ridiculous, and I love it so much at the same time, but it's just like there's so much tech and there's so many instruments, and you know what I mean, and we play off of a click track, we're very on time, and then in Coalesce it's very much looser, right? It's like it's a 4-piece, so me, Nate, and Jeff are locked in. I'm always locked in with rhythm, and then Jess is a free spirit, and he comes and goes live as he pleases, and so it's 2 very different ways to go, and that's what I was getting at earlier, that they give me perspective on each other, and Coalesce is never going to have an in-ear situation like we have, and 7 people is too many people to not be in sync, so it's so it's just interesting to kind of see those 2 sides, but yeah, I mean, there are things that I have brought over, which is something that people who don't scream don't understand, is there's actually a tone to your scream. The pitch and the tone of it can be off, and it can hurt your throat. So that's not always easy to hear if you just have earplugs in, or if you're using wedge monitors in the Coalesce setting. And so I have been bringing my in-ears over for that, and then the performances and my throat health has been way better. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to see how different the 2 are. I'm sure lights are next, and who knows what else. Yeah.
Yeah, you were going to wear costumes, and no, I'm just kidding.
No costumes. Please, no.
Dress up in a full black robe. It's a whole thing.
Yeah. No, not me, but nothing against folks that do it. It's just not me,
No, for sure.
And Sleep Token's one of my favorite, and it's just like, how do you sing with that mask on? It's gotta be difficult.
It's a whole different skill set that, most people don't have to explore, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I did not bring up our mutual friend who just recently passed away, Rich Hall, which obviously is, impacted, I mean, basically the whole scene, broadly speaking. And I know you obviously were close to him as well. The thing that I want to bring up in regards to him is the fact that it really, for me personally, and I know for many other people, it really solidifies the kind of oh yeah, this whole scene and thing that we do, and traveling around and caring about aggressive music, it's obviously meaningful, and it connects us to each other in a really deep way. And kind of going back to what you were saying, where it's just you go to your 30th high school reunion, and then, you and Dan roll in there, where it's just thick as thieves, and people will be like, oh, you guys are still friends together? That's a weird concept, How do you reflect on, like I said, using, Rich Hall as the sort of avatar, for our collective experience of caring about this music? As you've gotten older, how does, I guess, the scene and the friendships, does it resonate more to you? Is it just as important as, when you were 17 or 18? How do you reflect on that?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about Rich is how unfair and how quickly it was. He had just booked Coalesce. We just played for him. And the story about Rich and his passing that, I don't like is that, him and Carrie, we go way back, and and they were like the only promoters that like got me food I could eat for the writer, because Carrie's sensitive too. And so Rich, and this is a dumb story I'm telling you, but it has a point, I promise. So Rich got us this huge, he must have gotten us 5 pounds of nuts. It was this huge trash bag of nuts.
Right.
And, and we were eating them all night, and he was, and he said, hey, take them with you. You need to take all this stuff, take all the Topo Chico, take all this stuff with you. And we did. So Jessica was like, I'll take the nuts. And so for like 3 days, I think Rich, I guess it was only like 4 days after the show that he passed, and Jess in our group chat, he goes, still eating Rich's nuts. Or these, that sounded terrible. Still eating these nuts that Rich sent.
Yeah.
Rich would have loved that.
He would have, yeah.
It's like he's still eating these nuts that Rich, but I didn't hear from him, And so I think my understanding is maybe he was texting Rich, and Rich has already passed. You know what I mean? So poor Carrie's probably getting these ridiculous texts from Jess, making fun of these nuts, and so it's just the point of my story is that it's such a stupid little mundane thing, and that's how important these relationships are, is that we just have these stupid little conversations, you know what I mean? But when you pass, it's so quick, and and I don't think anyone processed it for a week, because we're like, no, we just talked to him, like we were just there, like we just hugged him. You know what I mean? We just talked about his art. We just talked about, how insanely stoked he was that his art was used on the cover. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the band.
Young Widows,
but,
yeah,
the Young Widows record, and he was so proud of that. And he was telling me the same thing unsolicited, that, that his art was what was keeping him alive. And, his, their baby boy was there. So it was just so quick. It was just because we were just there. So, I am super guilty of just going and putting my headphones in and, and talking to the people I know, and the people I don't. But, this idea that the people important it is, right? So like, your booking agent is your booking agent, but he's also somebody who's going to be important to you when this is long and done, because, he or she put this together. Your TM is going to be that way, and like, there are many, many riches in your life, that like, I just don't recognize. Right. And so, I was able to, at this, this festival that we just played in Philadelphia, I had a couple really cool experiences. There was this really interesting solo artist. He called it Underer. And, and like, I just took a chance and just chatted with him about what he was doing and stuff, and he had just lost his dad, and he wrote these songs and about his dad. And I was like, and I shared with what, we were dealing with. And, and then, this other band, was there, and it was just kind of one of those open back rooms, you know what I mean? Whereas I feel like many times I've just gone into the green room and I shut the door and was like, leave me alone. And, the headliner that night at that festival had done the same. They had their name on the door and it was shut tight, and we were told to leave them alone, and so, I think that, not every night's a good night, right?
Yep.
but this night was a good night, and I think that, I just think that, it was, I opened up to these guys and these guys opened up to me, no different than Rich did, when we played CBGBs, and he became a lifelong friend. So I just think that, this scene is really filled with super cool fucking people, and they all deserve the benefit of the doubt. You know what I mean? You're not at an ICP show, trying to, talk to weirdos. You're at a place with people who are speaking your language, and so I just really I'm grateful for Rich, first and foremost, but I don't think I would have thought like that, had he not passed either, So
No, totally. It's like those, as much as you don't want to experience those things. I mean, obviously it's an inevitability, but to your point, it's like it takes those moments of people that are special to you. And the only reason that they are special to you is because you got thrown into a small, sweaty room with them in whatever capacity. And I think that that's where, even if you hadn't spoken to a person in 10 years and you hear about, their passing or something, tragic happening to them, you would feel compelled to either reach out or try to help in whatever capacity. And I think that is only really truly because of these, random circumstances that have thrown us together in a special environment and not just like, I played Little League with them or whatever. It's like, well, cool.
Yeah.
And it's still sad that it happened to you, but you feel compelled.
Yeah. There's something different about this music scene, and there always will be, yeah, no, you're right. And there's so many people too, that, that are, have fallen into deep depression and have fallen to suicide, which is even,
Yep.
It's one thing to lose your friend, and that is the worst thing in the world. But like when someone you love, like, takes their own life, it's like that it puts this whole new element on it that hurts, like, in a different way, and so, like, there was several guys that in the music scene that, had passed. One of the guys was from Handshake Murders, which was kind of locally here in the regional area. And, it's just, I'm just prepared for, like, aunts, uncles, grandparents, parents, all that stuff, I'm just not prepared for buddies. There's
Absolutely.
that's the one that's just, it's taken a minute, to just to figure out how to navigate that, because it just feels like a kick to the head every single time,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no. And I appreciate you, expressing that and expressing yourself. And I know that was, it's something that I know all of us collectively, like, are processing it, to your point, in different ways. But I think he and many other people that embody some of his characteristics are, like I said, avatars for how special this scene is, and not just like viewing it through rose-colored nostalgic glasses where it's like, oh my gosh, it's so special. It's like, well, no, it's stuff like this that really reminds you, like, why you care about the thing that you do. And it's not just, band shirts and records. It's like, this is a lot.
And Rich was, I bolt social media all the time. I hate it. And then I'm like, maybe I want to do it. Rich, every single time, was the very first person to add me. You're back. Now I could talk to you. It's like, I have a cell phone. He didn't want to text me. He wanted to, and I would always appreciate that, because, like, I was like, cool. Well, at least Rich will give a shit, but every single time, and I've done it 5 times, and Rich was the first person every time to be in, like, you're here, you're back, let's go. It's like he was waiting for me. You know
Totally.
what I mean?
I love that.
So, yeah.
The last thing I wanted to hit on was I know with the record that you are releasing and just released, is the fact that I'm reflecting on certain pieces of our conversation previously, where it's like you were talking about how you viewed the decisions that, your 16-year-old child was making, and like maybe viewing it through a different lens, because you're just like, yeah, I'm not going to hold them to anything they're saying when they're 16. Like, we're all idiots when we're 16. Like, we have no idea what we're talking about. And I know this record, you are wrestling not only with your own mortality, but just then the impact of who you are as a person on your kids and stuff like that. And I realize it's kind of a big question here, but do you feel like you do or did give your kids kind of more grace, for lack of a better term, as they were making these decisions, to not just be like, okay, child, you're an idiot, and I'll just, I'll gloss over this fact or whatever. Do you feel like that did impact your, I guess, decision making or parenting process?
Well, I mean, there's this kind of internet meme out there, and I think we're guilty of it in real life. It says, "Oh, thanks a lot, mom and dad. Raised me to be my own person. Now I don't know what the fuck to do with my life." You know what I mean? It's like,
Sure.
and so we're kind of like that. With each of my kids, I do, because, our girls were homeschooled. And then when my wife got ill, our boys went to public school, and we navigated both of those. But like, there was a point in time to where, I did make my kids do something. I was like, I don't give a fuck what it is. I don't care what it is. Like, I really don't. Like, you need to do a thing. And one was roller derby, one was a thespian, one's a skateboarder. Yes. And then one was into, music. Right. And so, I think that no matter what you do it wrong. And that's my experience with being a parent, right? And so it's just constantly course correction, and so I want to make sure I don't lose the point of your question. But I want to tie it in, but I'm having a hard time because I'm trying to string a couple thoughts. What was the exact question? I'll write it down.
Did you, I guess, offer your kids more grace with the, proclamations or decisions as they were 16 years old?
Sure. Yeah. The one thing that, I did. So that was, so to tie that in, like I made them do something because I didn't want them to just like turn into potheads, right? And do nothing, and we struggled with that with a couple of them. It's just so funny to me to think that a kid would think that I don't know what the fuck pot smells like, you know what I mean, in my own house, So anyways, it's for another story for another time over whiskey. But, I mean, in my opinion, I feel like I do. In their opinion, they probably say I wouldn't,
Of course.
Because I think that something as a father that I don't always recognize is that, the power that a father someone loves has over them, like if the disappointment or the anger, in my words and when I'm talking to them it'll cut them to the quick, right? And so to me, from my perspective is, these people aren't listening, so I need to talk louder and firmer. But that's actually not the case, So anyways, I think like I said, I think the perspective is from me is that I do. I think perspective from them is not. But I feel like I got a nice little glimpse at that, that Kansas City show, when all four of them came out. I mean, all four of them were there, and they were like my own crew, you know what I mean? And we have the saying that if you fuck with one Ingram, you fuck with them all. And that's the 14-year-old to the 50-year-old, and that's just how, we are tight like that. So in that respect, I think we did okay,
There we go. That was a great discussion with Sean Ingram. And I have to give a special shout out to Rich Hall, who, for those of you that paid attention to the interview when we got to that spot, it was incredibly emotional, not only for Sean, but myself to watch, someone obviously hurting in regards to a friend not existing on this planet anymore. So special shout out to Rich and the family that he's left on this planet, and we will do everything that we can to support them as they move forward without a father and a husband. So like I said, please listen to Sean's band, Idle Heirs. Relapse Records, coming out on April 11th, and it's well worth your time investing in. So next week, I've got a great discussion with Marshall Lichtenwald, who's the vocalist from The Warriors. The Warriors is a band in 2025, and that is a thrilling proposition. For those of you that cared about the Warriors back when they first hit the scene in the early 2000s, an amazing amalgamation of Rage Against the Machine inspired hardcore. Always loved the band. Kind of thought that they were a little weird when I first heard them, but then I saw them a couple times and I was like, oh, I get where these guys are coming from. So the Warriors, Marshall, the vocalist, on the pod next week. Until then, please be safe, everybody.